Okay, we've done both of those. Okay, I need to share my screen. Oh, wait, actually, I'm going to do that after. Okay, got that. And then I just need to let people in. Perfect. Okay, so we're going to start. All right. Welcome, folks coming in. Thank you for spending your Thursday evening with us. We are looking forward to it. If you want to join in, and you can type in the chat with where you're tuning in from. Make sure you've got all panelists and attendees selected if you want to talk to everybody. If you just want to talk to us too, that's great. We love it. But if you want everyone to see it, make sure that's selected. And we'll be getting started very shortly. And we're going to go to Facebook Live too. And Facebook is happy today. Okay, so it worked. We're all set. And I'm just going to share my screen. All right. Knock on wood, the tech is happy today. I'm enjoying that. All right. There we go. And I just need to present so we can see that in full. Woo, there we go. Now we're cooking. Okay. So folks, I'm going to check the chat. I'm just seeing. Hello, Rebecca. Hi, Paige. Thank you for joining us. Some familiar names. Week's been going good. It's great right now because we've got our lightning talk here. And I'll also mention for folks coming in that you may notice that there's closed captioning at the bottom of the screen, once in case anybody wants to read along. But if you would prefer to turn yours off, you absolutely can. There is a closed caption button at the bottom of your own Zoom screens, and you can just select that and change the font or just turn it off completely, whatever you would prefer. Also just want to check in with the panelists. Can you see the screens or anything blocking my screen right now? Or is it looking good? Perfect. Okay, you never know when like a black box is going to turn up on your screen and you can't see it as the host. So yes, I'm glad everyone can see it. We'll give another minute or so for people to join in. Yes, and the chat is already exuberant, enjoying that. And thanks to Michaela, we've got our wonderful programs coordinator, Michaela Muldoon, with us here as backup, the original Lightning Talks host, who I'm sure you'd recognize. So thank you to Michaela for being here. Oh, loving the friendly introductions. Okay, well, let me just see. You know what? It's 7:03. So I think we'll get started and people can keep kind of trickling in as we go here. So welcome everyone to our Lightning Talks with Community Creators, this time featuring 5 wonderful folks from the Windsor Symphony Orchestra. So my name is Abby Lee Hallett. I am the Audience Engagement Coordinator here at the Art Gallery of Windsor. It is my great pleasure to be your host tonight for this event, and I am very much looking forward to jumping into it with all of you. Before we go further, We always begin all of our events at the art gallery with our land acknowledgement. And this is something I always say for folks, particularly if you've come to our events multiple times, you've probably heard this a lot. And I always try to say that, no matter how many times we've either read or heard this, that we want to make sure it's something we're keeping with us, not only for the duration of the event, but as we go forward, there are weeks and months, particularly given current events at this time. So I'm going to read it out now. While this conversation and recording is happening digitally, today I want to acknowledge that I am physically situated on Anishinaabe territory, the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of First Nations, comprised of the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi. Today, the Anishinaabe of the Three Fires Confederacy are represented by Walpole Island First Nation. I want to state my respect of the historical and ongoing authority of Walpole Island First Nation over its territory. Okay. So now we're going to jump into the flow of the lightning talk. So again, some of you are old pros, but for some of us, maybe this is our first time, and that is okay. So we're going to go through kind of what to expect for our evening. We have 5 wonderful panelists with us, and this is the order that you can expect to see them in. So we're starting off with our Maestro Daniel Wiley, who's the assistant conductor. We have Iris Krizmanic going second, plays the French horn. Lillian Scheirich, who's our concertmaster. Faith Scholfield, who's the director of operations, and also plays the oboe and English horn. And we are closing it out with Sam Fraser, who plays the bassoon. As you can see in the lovely backdrop, I love Sam's setup. And so each of our panelists are going to have 6 minutes to talk about things ranging from, perhaps you might hear about why they picked the instruments that they did, how they got to where they are, and any other interesting or kind of fun anecdotes that have come up along the way. I will be timing folks on my phone, so once we do hit 6 minutes, I usually get caught up in stories, so I'll probably give you a few extra seconds, but once we hit about 6 minutes, I'll jump in and we'll go to the next person until everyone has had a chance to present. And once all 5 have gone, we're going to have a Q&A period. So I always say that, bring your questions. People usually have a lot of great questions at our lightning talks, which is great, but always make sure you're keeping them respectful. I always like to say, if you wouldn't ask this question to your grandparent, maybe think twice before asking it at our lightning talk. And then for why we're doing this, well, we love celebrating our amazing creators, especially during this time when we can't get together in the same space to do so. We love that we have the opportunity to come in over Zoom to celebrate all of the amazing creators that make our community as vibrant as it is. So with that, all right, let's go, everyone. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Whoops, and I'm going to, there we go. I'm going to hand it off to Daniel. So I'm just going to spotlight your screen, Daniel, here.
Okay.
There we go. And just let me know when you're ready. When you are, I am going to start the timer.
You said 6 minutes, right? Okay.
6 minutes. You got this.
I'm ready whenever. I got it.
All
Well,
right.
First of all, good?
Yep, and go
Okay.
for it.
All right, great. Well, first of all, Abby, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate that. And thank you, Art Gallery Windsor, for having both myself and my colleagues from the Windsor Symphony on to celebrate community creators. It's something that we also find very important, so we're very excited to be here. Just a little bit about me. I'm the associate conductor of the Windsor Symphony Orchestra. I do about 65 concerts a year with the organization. They like to keep me busy. It usually keeps me out of trouble, though if you ask my colleagues, they might tell you otherwise. Don't believe a word they say. As you see the smiles going across their face. What I find so interesting, especially about joining this conversation, is that a lot of what I do with the Windsor Symphony is about creating in the community and finding partners to create within the community. So for example, a lot of what my portfolio with the Windsor Symphony covers is education, community outreach, our family concert series. As well, I conduct our 3 community ensembles, the Windsor Symphony Youth Orchestra, the Windsor Symphony Junior Youth Orchestra, and the Windsor Symphony Community Orchestra. All 3 of those ensembles are comprised of amateur musicians who live here in Windsor and just love making music. And so we come together and make music on a weekly basis. Speaking of community connections, I'm just going to talk about our family concerts a little bit. We usually do about 4 to 5 a year, and each one of them we try to find a new community partner to connect with, to create art together. We're really focused on supporting arts in the community, and I'm one of the people who helps spearhead that sort of collaboration that we find in the community in Windsor. For example, this past year, even with the pandemic, we produced 4 shows that were based on stories written by kids right here in Windsor. So we had 4 different stories, original stories written by kids here in Windsor. Their age range was 5 to about, I think, 11. So you can imagine these stories were quite adorable. I set them to music, and then we partnered with Windsor Dance Experience, and we had them dance the play or dance the story along with the music, as well as the laughtertainer Matthew Romaine. If you've ever been out on the street, AC, Abby knows what I'm talking about. Matthew Romaine is an extraordinary puppeteer and entertainer. And so he created some puppeteers to help tell the stories while we played the music. So that's kind of the idea about how we can really connect to the community. The other piece that's really exciting is our education concerts. I helped lead this past year as well. And we have not only served our community here in Windsor-Essex by providing digital content for them, about 12 hours worth of digital content for students and teachers here in Windsor-Essex, but we've also expanded our digital education concert series to reach about 122,000 students across Canada and the United States. And so a lot of what I do for the symphony now is Zoom calls into students' classrooms to do live Q&As with them about orchestral instruments. So right now, I'm actually on the West Coast, so I'm 3 hours behind you guys, and I was up at 6:45 this morning answering questions from kindergartners, which was absolutely adorable, but it was still 6:45 in the morning. And part of my passion, for those of you who don't know me really well, part of my passion and why I love what I do at the Windsor Symphony Orchestra comes from my experience as a public school teacher prior to becoming an orchestra conductor. So before I decided that I wanted to spend my life waving my arms at people for fun and hopefully growing some beautiful conductor hair, I'm still working on that. I spent my life as a music teacher in public schools, and so I really got a sense of what it was like to interact with students every day on a personal level. And I've brought those experiences with me to the Windsor Symphony. I'd also like to note, just as we start going through, you'll notice that my colleagues all have their instruments sort of nearby or near them. And so I am not abstaining from this club. I have my baton right here. It was just out of view. There was no good place to hold it. So if you are wondering why doesn't he have an instrument, I do have it. It's right here. Let's see here. What else have I? I love this. Abby's very supportive. Some of the other things that we do here at the Windsor Symphony that are part of sort of creating within the community has to do with our neighborhood concerts. And we usually do about 6 of them a year. And again, we find different people out in the community and help give them a voice through music. We are incredibly fortunate and well, just fortunate, I think, is probably the best word, to have such incredible musicians that work for the Windsor Symphony Orchestra, that we're able to share that music with our community. And that's sort of how we create in the community. We take our wonderfully talented musicians, which you're going to learn more about here in just a minute, under a minute, and we help connect them with our community to not only support their artistic development, but also just increase the quality of life that we have in Windsor. I mean, Windsor-Essex is a beautiful place to live, and it's even more so when we have great artists and great institutions like Art Gallery Windsor who come together to make it even better for us. Look at that. Am I under a minute? Boom.
Perfect. Oh my gosh, look at you at the time. That was excellent. Well, oh my goodness, you touched on so many things in 6 minutes. First I want to say I think we're all like curious as to what conductor hair is. So I don't know if that's going to be a question in the Q&A, but it's possible. But I love how focused you are on serving the community and talking about bringing in all sorts of different artistic disciplines to create a story together. This wonderful immersive experience, and bringing in Matthew, who of course got a soft spot for us. He is my cousin, so I'm grateful to be related. So thank you so much for kicking it off, Daniel. That was wonderful. All right, so I'm going to hand it off to Iris now. I'm just going to spotlight your screen. There we go. And yeah, whenever you're ready, Iris, you can jump right in.
Okay, thank you. Hello, and I'm glad to be here. My name is Iris Chrismanic, and I'm the principal horn with the Windsor Symphony Orchestra. It's fun to talk about what I do because one of the funny things about where I am now is how I did not expect to be where I am now when I was going through school. So as principal horn, I'm you can think of me sort of like in a symphony orchestra. More often you have 4 of us. So I'm the one in the sort of principal chair, and I sort of lead the section through example. I was hoping to be after Lillian, so I could be like, I'm the Lillian of the horn section, but you'll learn about her job in a second. But yeah, so it's kind of funny because when I first started out, like singing when I was really, really young. Like I was like 6 years old, and I loved to sing. And then I played the cello, and my mom was like, I'm going to get you into music school. So I took piano. That didn't work out because I cried. And I was like, I don't know, 7. But then it was in public school that I ended up sort of picking up the horn around the time when kids actually choose an instrument to start. And I didn't want to be part of the choir because I had been singing in the Trotton Children's Chorus for a while then. So I was at a very wise age. I was too good for the school choir. So I ended up choosing the French horn. It was pretty, it was round, I thought it was really nice. And so I picked it, and the teacher was like, oh my God, horn player. Yeah, you totally will play the horn. So going from there into high school, which I went to an art school, and I auditioned for it on horn and on cello, which I was still playing at the time, and am still playing at the time right now. And it was in high school that one of my teachers, through connections and stuff, that they suggested that I audition for university on horn, and I thought they were crazy. I had only been playing horn because it was something else to do. I hadn't practiced it for as long. I hadn't taken private lessons for it as long. But I auditioned for university on it, got into university on horn and not on cello, which was devastating and also terrifying. And then in like my second year of university, I ended up winning my first job, which just killed me. It was a real shock. And then later on in my life, I won this job at the Windsor Symphony, and it's been a learning experience ever since. Just constantly learning from my colleagues who are amazing musicians, and yeah, it's been pretty great. But for how like bafflingly I've gotten to where I am, I started with 1 horn, so I have this one, but now I have 3. Just over the course of my career. So I have the regular horn, you can see this one, and then I also have my descant for like the high finicky stuff. You can see it's slightly smaller and slightly less tubing on it, so it plays higher. And then the one I don't get to play very often, but is my classical horn. So, and there's not much to it. Yeah, it's really great. That's sort of like bafflingly, I started with nothing, and now I have 3 horns. kind of my favorite thing about it, and one of the big challenges that I think is unique about being a musician, I find, is actually the public speaking. Speaking of the public speaking, it's a thing we have to practice quite a lot. And it's anything from you're playing a small concert to you're doing a talk like this. And I have a very vivid memory of practicing that. I am still quite introverted, but it took taking a public speaking class, an acting class for voice students in school, that really got me out of my shell to practice speaking in front of a large amount of people. I'm sure it's helpful that I only actually see my colleagues here and Abby, so this is like a little bit less of less pressure, but it did take a lot of practice to do that, and it was good to have that little bit of experience. I don't know where everybody else gets it from, but that voice class, it's a vocal class for acting, that really helped me a lot. I suppose the last couple of things I can add is that the other things, it's also what I've also found is encouraging people to not just do one thing when you're doing music, because you are the more rounded you are as a person, the better it is. So the more things you read, the more things you listen to, the more things you watch, the more people you talk to, the more places you go, and the more instruments you play, the more things you do musically as well is always great. So the fact that I started singing, I have like the tiniest bit of piano, and as I said, cello. I still actually play cello every so often. I used to play in Gilbert and Sullivan productions, which was really fun. These community orchestra, Gilbert and Sullivan productions. And I would sing at church. Bach arias were my favorite. So, you know, it's all sort of one big round package of that expands your horizons as you become a truly fully realized person. I'm sure eventually when I'm like 100.
Gosh, thank you, Iris. That was awesome. Oh, people are just, you're all keeping like right to the time, which is amazing and hard to do. So well done. I thought it was so interesting. I'm so glad you shared that you started on a kind of a different path and ended up making your way to horn, because I think sometimes we feel like, okay, we start on this, then we have to just take this one path. But you're absolutely right that it helps to have that more more well-roundedness, and then you get to really find out what you like and what's fun, and then you might end up with 3 of the instrument as you showed, which is so beautiful. So thank you so much. Okay, so Tudan, we're now going to hand it over to Lillian. So Lillian, I'm just going to spotlight your screen. There we go. And whenever you're ready, you can jump in.
Okay, well, thank you, Abby. Thanks for having me here to talk, and thanks for having all of us. It's great to see everybody. I've missed everybody because it's been hard not being at rehearsal and seeing everyone and making music. So I look forward to the fall when we can get back together. So I'm also happy to be part of the show because it does spotlight Windsor, and I'm from Windsor, and I'm really glad to be back in Windsor. I didn't expect to be here, kind of what I was saying, she never thought she'd end up where she ended up, but neither did I. I thought I would come back to Windsor and then that would be a stepping stone somewhere else, but I ended up staying here and having a family here and getting married here and having a life here. And it's been a really nice career. I've enjoyed being part of the Windsor culture, and I've enjoyed being with the symphony so much. I've learned so much, and I've had so many wonderful opportunities. It's really nice being a part of this to kind of say thank you, because Windsor is great, and a lot of people don't know that. So thanks for putting this show on to help people know that we have stuff down here at the bottom of the province. That's it's a great place to be. Anyway, I am the Iris of the string section, and my job is I lead the strings. I'm the first violin in the orchestra. I play the violin, and as Iris put it so well, you lead by example, you lead by demonstrating, you lead by how you're going to play a certain passage. I'm the liaison between the conductor and the orchestra. I help realize his expectations to make it our string section and then further along with the rest of the orchestra sound like he would like it to sound. So we all work together, our section leaders work together to demonstrate what needs to be demonstrated so that the rest of the section can have the same sound. And then together we form this instrument called the orchestra and hopefully present something that's beautiful and moving and emotional and everything you want to hear when you go to a concert. So a couple of things about myself. Like I said, I'm from Windsor and I started playing violin and piano when I was about 5. And I have my mother to thank for that. She thought music would be something I should learn. And I'm grateful to her. She made a lot of sacrifices for me to do that. I learned piano in Windsor and I studied in Detroit, and they had a really wonderful music school that of course doesn't exist anymore. And I was there for 13 years concurrently when I was in public school here and in high school. And it enabled me to learn theory and music history and orchestra and quartets and lessons. And they had scholarships. And if it wasn't for that kind of a school, I wouldn't have been able to take lessons because we didn't have a lot of money. And my mom was a public school teacher, an elementary teacher, and she stopped working when I was born. And a lot of people did that back in the 60s. And so it was a one-income family. And my dad painted houses. So we didn't have a lot of money. And so they were great to me. And they gave me a violin on loan that I took with me to university. And one of the turning point when I was studying over there was I got a chance to go to Europe and study at the Mozarteum in Salzburg, Austria for one summer. And I studied with a gentleman from the Paris Conservatory, Jean Fournier. And I heard all these fantastic students and they were brilliant and they just were wonderful. And I thought, I want to be like that. That's fantastic. How do they do that? This is amazing. So it kind of like, it opened my eyes. It opened a door. I wanted to try and do that. So I said, what do I do? What's the next step? They said, you go home, you practice twice as much, 3 times as much as you're practicing now. And you do as much as you can in your community to learn about your instrument, or go whatever orchestra's around there, you go try and join it. So I came back to Windsor. I was 14 and I don't know how that worked. I called the symphony and asked for an audition. It was a different orchestra. It was still considered professional for the city, but the pay scale was a lot lower and it was not a full-time job by any means. It was a different setup. And I won the audition and I started playing with the orchestra when I was 14 and I got money for playing violin. And that was like, this is great. I'm hooked. I want to do this. So I saved up money. And I played the first concert. I was so excited. And the second concert, we had a little setback. My mom got sick. Well, she was sick. We just didn't know. And she passed away. So she heard one concert. And then it was like, okay, she got me on the road. This is what I want to do. And then my dad was with me through high school. And then I told him I wanted to go into music. So I sent out a bunch of auditions for different music schools. I ended up at the Eastman School of Music in Rochester, New York, and that's where I wanted to go. And I thought if I got in there, I would do anything possible to get in. And I got there and did a degree in violin performance. And when I also did a degree in music education because I thought, I need something in case this doesn't work out for me. And I got to be a supply teacher because you can do that at the end of your degree. And I loved working with the kids. I did about a half a year of supply work. And I have the greatest respect for teachers who do this every day. And I knew I couldn't do it because it's absolutely exhausting. You're on all day long and I couldn't keep up. That was too hard. I loved it, but I couldn't do it. And I thought, okay, I need to do something that I can make a difference and do something that I love, but keep up the pace and make a life for myself. I thought, you got to take auditions. So I was lucky enough to win an audition here in Windsor. And again, I had another setback. My dad died my last year of university, so he didn't see me come back to Windsor, but I settled everything when I came back here, settled up his estate, and thought, okay, what's the next step? And the next step was I ended up staying here and building a life. And I'm so lucky that it worked out that way because Windsor is great. I have wonderful students. I teach at the University of Windsor. I was just able to teach at Western for a year on a full-time replacement for the professor there. I got a chance to work with wonderful students up there. I work with students here. I have a wonderful studio at home and I have wonderful colleagues. When we make music, it's probably the highlight of my day. the sound you get when you're in the middle of that orchestra and you're part of that instrument, which is the orchestra, there's no words to describe that. That is just the most amazing feeling. And I can't wait to get back there. So thank you again, Abby, and thanks everyone. Nice to see you all.
Thank you, Lillian. Oh my gosh, I love your enthusiasm. I felt like I was just swept into everything you were saying as you were saying, like you can see how much you love what you do. And that is really wonderful to see. And also the violin, like I've myself played piano. I've heard how hard it is to learn and master the violin. So kudos for mastering it. That is amazing. Okay, we're over halfway through. Our panelists' time is flying. So if you've got any questions, you can feel free to drop them in the Q&A box now, and we'll get to them, or just keep coming up with some. That's okay too. I'm going to hand over. Faith has got her instruments all ready, so I'm going to spotlight her screen. And Faith, whenever you're ready, you can start it off.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having all of us here. And it's great to know that there's people whose faces we know and miss on the other side of the screen that I just can't see right now. So I'm Faith. I have a couple jobs in the orchestra. I don't know how to, so we'll start out with where I started with the orchestra, which I play second oboe English horn. So I'm not the Lillian of the oboes. I'm the Lillian, and in fact, the only English horn player. So an oboe is a double reed. The English horn is the larger sibling of the oboe. They both make sound in the same way. For those of you who remember the movie Gabriel's Oboe, or The Mission has the tune Gabriel's Oboe, which is the one piece I will say I've played whenever I'm hired for weddings. It is always that. So if you're thinking of getting married and would like an oboe player, please not that. We will thank you and may give you a discount, just for the record. Other places you can hear us, there's great stuff in Star Wars, the Across the Stars thing. We got a lot of the sultry, often sad, especially English horn tunes. If you were a 90s movie soundtrack back when they used orchestras, every death or love scene involved one of these, which is pretty fantastic. So I started with this orchestra in 2004 when I won the job playing both of these. You have to bring both of your instruments to an audition. The way orchestra auditions work, because we're a union organization and are striving for equity on stage so that we look like our community, you show up and you perform behind a curtain. You walk on stage without heels on. No one sees you except for the auditions manager, who in our case is our librarian, Beth. That means that no one knows what you look like, what your gender is. It's a really interesting way to hire, in the sense that for everybody else, right, there's always talk about people see names that they say, oh, that person's name doesn't look like mine. We're gonna put that resume in a different pile, right? It's a really different way of hiring. After you get hired, there's a tenure process, which, similar to any other tenure process, oh, I forgot to turn off my email, sorry about that, is about 1.5 years, maximum 2 for orchestras, and then you actually have the job. So it takes a while to get there. This was never where playing was something I always loved, much like Iris and Lillian, and I think all of our parents. Parental support and cultural access is the key. And it was something that I loved doing, but I was gonna grow up and I was gonna be a marine biologist. And then the year I started playing the oboe, my parents, who are immensely supportive, we flew out west to BC and we went on a boat ride to see whales. And I think it was a gray whale came up next to our boat, and I learned, as did the whale, that I got very seasick. So grade 6 me had to come up with a new life plan, because I am that person still, but I was that kid who's like, this is what I'm doing. And my life plan then became this. So Lillian and I shared the same school. We both went to Eastman. Then I came back to do my master's at University of Michigan and got the job in Windsor. And much like Lillian, I thought, I will be here for 5 years and I will go somewhere else. but Windsor sucks you in. It's amazing. There's so much to do. It's beautiful. When the borders open, being able to hop over to Detroit is spectacular. My family is nearby. It really has been just about the perfect fit for me. Much also like Iris, I think it was Iris, someone said it, that you just don't say no. When you're a musician, especially a musician starting without a permanent job, you say yes. You want me to play Gabriel's oboe at your wedding? Yes, I'd love to. I love that piece. You want me to play at this church service or that event? We're in. That's how you survive, right? And so there came a point, I was the musician liaison on the WSO board of directors, and we had a staff leave mid-season, and they said, hey, we think you can write, because I was writing board reports. You need to fill in for this staff person. And I said, yes, because that's what one does. So in 2011, I started working part-time in the office, excuse me, as education and outreach manager. Then years went on and I just, again, stayed because I loved it, because the kind of community enrichment and engagement I think that we strive for here is quite special. You know, a lot of big orchestras, they perform Mahler on stage for audiences of 3,000. We can't do that here in Windsor. We cannot fit that number of musicians. Oh, that's me, 1 minute, sorry, Abby. And so we don't. So anyway, so then I became director of operations. That's a job where I am, I don't even know how to describe it. I write contracts, I read so many union agreements. It's taken me, my brain in a completely different direction, but still relates back to this, which I love. It still means that I and my colleagues can get on stage and make music. And we really all can't wait to get back to that as soon as we can. And there we go, it sort of worked.
Again, right on time. Oh my goodness, thank you so much, Faith. I I love what you're saying about in every scene of love or death, the oboe appears. I don't think I will ever watch an action film in the same way again. That is amazing. And to have wanted to be, at first when you said marine biology, I don't know if anyone in the attendance watches Seinfeld, but my brain went to that. So there's this whole series about that where one of the characters pretended to be a marine biologist, but you actually wanted to be a marine biologist. That's so interesting to gone from there, like, you know what, no, oboe, English horn, and just went right for it. So that is quite an amazing trajectory, and I'm seeing clearly people are interested because we've got 4 questions in the chat and I'm sure more to come. But before we get to our questions, we have one more panelist, and that is Sam. So Sam, I'm going to spotlight your screen, and whenever you are ready, you can jump right in.
All right, well, hello everyone. It's great to be here, and it is absolutely wonderful to see my colleagues and friends again, even though it is virtually. Yeah, just listening to all my friends' stories, there's so much that I can relate to and connect with, from just like the early beginnings of how I got in touch with my own instrument here, the bassoon. Oh, I should probably say that. I'm the principal bassoon of the Windsor Symphony Orchestra, and I'm kind of like the Iris and Lillian and the Faith of my section. So I, in theory, I like to try to make things equitable, but I in principle try to lead the section and provide some direction for what the section should do and how we fit into the group. So how does one get involved with the bassoon? That's a tough question. So the bassoon is kind of like, I would say, like the awkward cousin to the oboe. We aren't what you would hear. This isn't the instrument that you're going to hear during any love scene or any death scene. It's kind of more of the clown almost. We're kind of the goofy sound that you would hear. I think the most famous excerpt is from The Sorcerer's Apprentice, from Fantasia, I should say, in The Sorcerer's Apprentice. We essentially are the soundtrack to all those dancing brooms. That's where you would hear the bassoon. And I think the bassoon actually has a lot more depth than just being the clown, but a lot of composers seem to sort of typecast us in that way. So for my musical journey, it started much like everyone on the panel here at a very young age. And it actually started, I think I was around 5. and my mom wanted to give me an activity to do. It was as simple as that, just a plain simple activity. So she put me in soccer, actually took ballet classes, and she gave me the option of doing the Suzuki school. And I chose the violin of all things. So I actually dug this out for Lillian, but I have my own violin here. That's for proof. But I did that for a number of years, and that was sort of my first introduction into music. And with Suzuki in the method there, I think much of the principle lies around learning music by ear. So before you learn to read music, you actually learn to sort of hear it and play it back. And that's actually influenced a lot of sort of how I approach music to this day is by ear. I like to listen to things like on repeat. And I find that that's how I learn the fastest. It's just by ear. And it's because of my upbringing with Suzuki school. So I have the bassoon in my hands today and not the violin. And I think the spoiler is that the violin wasn't really the instrument for me. I was a terrible student. I did not like to practice. I found myself being bored, even though it was a beautiful instrument. A lot of the times my teacher would tell me you have to do things and to, try this and listen to this symphony, listen to this orchestra. And I didn't respond in that way. I was a very, very slow learner. And it was because I didn't usually pick the instrument up. It's one of those things. I had a teacher, it's my first violin teacher. She said, "Sam, you are so musical, but you are absolutely the slowest and most," she said, I don't think this is verbatim, but the sentiment was one of the most musical students and the slowest learner. So that's something that really stuck with me. And I even to this day, when I'm not practicing, I think to myself, like, you don't want to be that student. You have to, you're a professional now, you have to practice. But it's tough sometimes to be consistent, because it really requires constant dedication on a day-to-day basis. And that's something that took me a very, very long time to learn. So violin didn't work out, but I had the great privilege of being introduced to the bassoon through my middle school band director. I went to a school called the Claude School for the Arts. And this was a very special program. It still exists. It's in Toronto. And it's a program that introduces students to all of the arts. So when you're a student there, you're not just studying one medium. You get to study things like dance, visual arts. I believe there was something like national dance, all kinds of things. And music was among the other subjects that we got to study. So like I mentioned earlier, I had been playing the bassoon, or the violin rather. And when I went to this program, they said, you've already been playing a string instrument. We have a string and a band program, and we think you might do well if you switched and learned another instrument. Why not try out a woodwind instrument or a brass instrument? And essentially, they did this really neat project where they had the 7th graders come in to show the 6th graders the instruments. So I saw things like the flute, the clarinet, the tuba, the trombone, and I saw the bassoon. And it wasn't the sound that drew me in. It was actually the shape of it. And I thought it was really, really neat and unique. It was such a long and odd looking thing. And when I remember actually the student's name, Lyndon, I remember he took it out of the case, and it comes in many, many pieces. It comes in 5 pieces. So you put each piece together, and I was like, whoa, that's kind of like it's like a big Lego project. It comes in this little rectangular case, and all of a sudden you have this like 5.5 foot long, piece of wood. So that was what really piqued my interest about this instrument. So eventually our band director said, okay, you have to put down 3 instruments now, from your one you want to play the most, second, and then to your 3rd favorite. So I put the tuba, the trombone, and then finally the bassoon. So it's not really like a really fairy tale and sort of like a Disney love story. It was my 3rd choice, but it's something that once I had it in my hands and once I started to play it in band, it really resonated with me, and it's stuck ever since. So it's something that I eventually played in middle school. I love the community. I love the group. I love playing band with my friends, and it was such a tight-knit group of people, and we got to play things like Phantom of the Opera, musicals, all kinds of different types of music, and that's what really has kept me in music for this long. It's been the community, and just getting to play things from all around the world and get to explore different types of sounds. So I went to school, and actually another connection with Lillian and Faith. I went to Eastman as well. So that was my undergraduate degree was at Eastman. I was inspired to go there because my high school bassoon teacher, that was where he went, and that's where I wanted to go. So he did everything he could to give me the skills to try to take an audition there.
Sam, I'm gonna have to jump in. If you have like one last sentence you want to say, please feel free. But you're just past 6 minutes, so I just want to jump in.
Okay. So long story short, went to school, I took an audition, and Windsor was my third audition, and I've been playing there ever since. This was my fourth season. Should have been my fourth season playing here. So it's been a great life, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here with you all today.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, very good, quick segue as I kind of put you on the spot. So well done. I wrote down a couple of things that stuck out to me. I love that you referred to the bassoons like this exciting Lego project. I know one of my friends like way back was a bassoon player, and I'd never seen one before. I just thought it was like coolest thing. It looked so like it was just took up so much space. I'm like, I love this. And you're right. It does not deserve to just be the cloud. It deserves to be in there for the love and the death scene. So hopefully, you'll make it happen. But my goodness, we are through everyone, and it is time for our Q&A. I'm seeing that there are already questions in the chat, so we're just going to jump right in and read some of them off here. So all right, we've got several. So we've got some excited fans wondering when we're going to be able to see the symphonies. This is from Helen Parks asking, when do you think we'll be able to see a live performance by our wonderful symphony? Oh, thank you, Helen, for your question. We were just talking about this before the webinar started, actually. So this is for everyone.
Okay, so
jump in.
It's you. Faith, it's you.
Great, check it. So hi Helen. So a lot of that depends on provincial regulations and health and safety considerations. At this point, knock on wood, we're going to have a small pop-up concert in Amherstburg on August 22nd outdoors, and then we'll have another one outdoors on the riverfront in Amherstburg on September 19. Our season will be announced once we have some provincial direction as to what is allowed. We have various options in place. We'll be live streaming some to get that interactive feel, though interactive through a screen again, regretfully. If we're allowed to have any audiences in the theater, we're really hoping to do that. But yeah, hopefully people will start seeing announcements from us in the next month. So August, mid-August at the latest. And yeah, the fall, fingers crossed.
We're collectively crossing all of our fingers and toes at this point because it'd be amazing to see the symphony back in action. So thank you, Helen, for your question. And we've got another question from Helen. So thank you for your wonderful questions. And Helen's asking, are most of the musicians who play in the symphony from Windsor, or are they part-time, and do they play with symphonies in multiple areas?
I mean, personally, I can jump in and say that I'm actually from Toronto, but and I play with the Windsor Symphony, but I also play with the Niagara Symphony and also freelance elsewhere. It's a way to I mean, it's a very small music world, so you kind of get to know lots of other people, and you keep your skills sharp by playing with lots of different groups and people all around. It's a way to keep you active and seen as a musician.
Yeah, and they call a lot of freelancers, we call sort of amongst ourselves, we call it the 401 Philharmonic, because we might be in one city one day, another city the next day, and you kind of see the same group of people traveling around. So I think, yeah, most of us play anywhere from Windsor all the way to Kingston, Thunder Bay. It's like, it's all over, all over the place.
Thank you for that question. I was wondering that too. So I appreciate that question, Helen. Thank you so much. Okay, so interestingly, I got some questions from Michaela, and they're almost identical to the ones that Paige is asking. So we'll say Michaela and Paige both want to know what conductor hair is. So I guess Daniel, you can answer that. Okay, wow. I love that you had a
I saw that
photo
question and I
ready.
queued it right up. See, this is conductor hair. See, this is Gustavo Dudamel. He's music director of the Los Angeles Philharmonic. Do you see the volume? Do you see the action? Do you see the yeah. I'm working on it. We'll get there.
There you go. You've got a few more inches and then you can like really just make it wild.
Yeah,
and then
I
someday
gotta curl it and then make it wild. That's right.
there you go. Someday in a future lightning talk, we're gonna have a conductor like, this is conductor hair. It's gonna be a picture of you. So it'll happen. Okay, and Paige and Michaela are also asking probably the question on many an attendee's mind today. We're wondering if anyone would be okay with giving kind of a little taste of what the instrument, like what their various instruments sounded like. So I don't know if that's on the table, but if so, that'd be great.
I'd be okay with doing that. I have all three of my horns here, so in fact, the more interesting one is the natural horn. But I'll play a scale on my regular horn, which this is your like educational moment. So regular horn has valves, so I play a scale on the regular horn. And then if I switch it out for my natural horn, which has, as you can see, absolutely no valves and very little tubing, I'll actually be using my hand to change the notes. And it goes. Or if you need to see it more firmly. So that's in a nutshell how the horn operates.
That was so cool. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I see everyone's like getting prepped.
Okay,
yeah, who wants to jump in?
Okay,
Lillian, yay. Okay.
I'll jump. Okay, so so unlike Iris, I all my notes, the high ones are up here and the low ones are down there. I don't get to switch instruments, so it's not quite as much fun. So I think everyone knows this piece. I'll just play a little bit of it, not the whole thing. And that's it.
Oh, live music. That was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I was getting lost in the music. All right. Who wants to jump in? I feel like Sam looks ready.
Oh, yeah, I'm ready. Okay. So the bassoon, yeah, we have all of our notes here. We don't have to switch like Iris. So we control our notes through our fingers and tone holes and some keys on the back. There are actually a lot of keys for the thumb, so get a lot of work because I think there are about 10 or 11 keys that we have to switch between here. Oh, so I'll just give you a little tip to this. So that's a little bit of the bassoon.
Okay, well now it's confirmed. It definitely does not deserve to just be the cloud in the back. It's so beautiful. You're welcome. All right. Faith, do you want to jump in?
For sure. So Sam and I actually make sound the same way, which is on our reed, which is why you see us both shoving things in our mouth. which by itself sounds ridiculous, and my apologies for any of you on headphones, that may have been slightly overwhelming. But then it goes on and the vibrations from the reed come out the instruments. So it's simple key work, even though Sam and I are very closely related and in the same instrument family. I only have 2 keys for my thumb. I'm not as fancy, but then I have more on the front. So my English horn, except I haven't played that in so long, I forgot the notes. It's been a while since I looked at that excerpt, but that would be the English horn.
Oh my gosh, these are all so beautiful. Thank you so much. That was awesome. I feel like I am just speechless. It's so nice to hear, this music live, even over Zoom. It sounds beautiful. So I can only imagine being in person. That would just be great. So, okay, right, gotta focus. Okay, more questions. We've got a couple more questions. So I think based on time, we'll ask these next 2, and then we'll start to close it out. So Helen, we've got another wonderful question from Helen, who's asking how much rehearsal is required before a symphony concert is performed in front of the audience. Oh, I was wondering that too. So thank you for asking that, Helen. And this is for everyone who would want to jump in.
Sure, I'll jump in on that one unless Faith wants to take it. So Helen, the answer to that is it really depends on how difficult and how long the program is going to be. So generally you can imagine for our masterworks concerts, which are sort of they're kind of our bread and butter of what we do. Usually you can expect 4 to 5 rehearsals, depending on how difficult the program is that week. All of our musicians get their music about 2 weeks in advance, and then they show up to the first rehearsal being completely prepared, knowing every note, dynamic, everything, just having their part all worked out, and then we sort of glue it together. So that's how we're able to do it in such a short time frame. Now, when you start talking about some of our smaller concerts, like our community concerts or our education concerts, sometimes we do a single rehearsal and then we perform. And those ones, it is really incumbent upon whoever is programming, usually the conductor, and Faith can attest to this, that you make sure that you program in such a way that we can be successful in a single rehearsal and a concert. So there's a little bit of navigating, making sure that you're programming something that's appropriate for the type of concert that you're doing, but also making sure that you leave enough rehearsal space to accomplish that. That's also why, if you go and see a big Masterworks concert, usually we've got like one big piece on that concert that we're really trying to accomplish. You'll never see like 3 big pieces in a row on a same concert, just simply because we don't have enough time to put it all together, and it would feel a little like having dinner twice.
Thank you. You're getting applause over here for that answer. So thank you. And thank you, Helen, for your question. And oh my gosh, time-wise, this is working out. We got one more question. This is from Jane and Brian Buttery. Oh, I love that name. So thank you, Jane and Brian. And I know a couple of you touched on teaching. So this might be open to everyone if you're still currently teaching. They're asking how much of your time is spent teaching students?
I can jump in. About half right now. Now it's full time until the symphony gets back. And when the symphony's going, it's about half the time. So it's like having 2 full-time jobs. You have to try and juggle that around the rehearsal schedule and juggle that around your practicing and not let the students down and try and make sure you've not forgotten stuff for them, make sure they're on the right track and not lose any time with your own things. So it's kind of making sure you've got your priorities in line and are organized. I try and be organized. The rest of my life is completely unorganized, but I try and keep that part going. So yeah, we spend a lot of time. I think most of us spend a lot of time teaching as well, especially with the pandemic. It's really increased it.
Yeah, I think absolutely. Like I agree with Lillian. It's a pretty significant part of being a musician is also being a teacher. And when you're in school, you think, I'm just going to be a player. But, you know, I think it's part of like the tradition, like once you become a professional and once you really learn all the skills, to pass it on to younger players as well. So that's in addition to also being a source of income, it also is a part of the tradition. And it's kind of like the apprenticeship that you would imagine, like with some kind of like someone making an anvil or something. You know, you learn the skill, you master it, and then you have to pass it on down the road. So a lot of us do spend a significant amount of time teaching as well. I myself have I think 4 students at the moment. I say I think because I think one's moving on, but it's something that's it's a part of the work as well. It's a very important part of being a musician.
Well, it sounds busy, but also so worthwhile. And like, oh goodness, I think that especially during this time, you know, when it's so hard to be able to get together, that still having those educational opportunities for students would be so wonderful. So thank you for doing what you do. Does anyone else, I don't want to cut off any other panelists, anyone else want to jump in? Either, I see some head shakes about this question or anything else, or everyone's looking good. Well, we're just about at time, which, wow, look at us go. We had music, which was beautiful. I saw Paige in the chat saying, thank you so much for your playing. We got to learn a bit more about Windsor Symphony Orchestra, which if you want to keep tabs on what's going on, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we're at Windsor Symphony on most yes, okay, perfect. I know on Instagram, but I wasn't sure. Okay, so you can follow Windsor Symphony on social media to get ready for the fingers crossed concert, which would be amazing to have live. We got lots of love coming through the chat as well. So thank you so much for all who joined us tonight. I'm going to share my screen one last time for us tonight, but I got to make sure I'm on the actual right screen here. Let me just open that up. And I'm going to show, we have a few things coming up at the gallery here. So let me get that up. There we go. And present. It's thinking about it. There we go. So we have, of course, we finished our lightning talks for today, but we've got several things coming up. We have a summer learning series, which we have several different workshops of those. It's coming up June and July. And we have one more all ages art night on June 29th, which is sure to be engaging. And then we have Flurf. Do you want to know what Flurf is? Now you can know with Michaela Muldoon, who's here with us today as well. And of course, we have more of our Taking Care Where Art Meets Wellness sessions and Thrive, which the wonderful Derek Carl Busso runs. So got a lot going on, but I just want to say, as we conclude tonight, thank you so much for being here. It was great to have you here. We hope to see you at other events in the future, and hopefully in not very long, actually in person when it's safe to do so. Yay. So have a wonderful rest of your evening. I know I'm just going to be like enjoying that our little live music session until we get to meet again, and have a wonderful rest of your week. Hope to see you again soon, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.